Contessa. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, 2008.
Since we acquired the Beaver brand, Jim has offered to help us build the first Beaver if we wanted to crank it up again. And I said, why don't you just buy a chassis and we'll build it and you can be involved in it and we'll get this thing going. But I don't think he wants to come out of retirement yet.
At my age, I'd be pushing it.
So anyway.
It would be fun, though.
Many of you probably don't know this, but when Matt took over Beaver, that would have been 1994-ish, then he built, you know, what the newer look and then sold to Monaco in 2001. But he brought Jim in to help with the Solitaire. So Jim was it had this R&D building and it was top secret, and Jim was very involved in the designing of the Solitaire and that whole project.
And it was going to be called the Millennium, and somebody got the name before we got it, and so we had to change it.
That's right. That is a Prevost conversion.
Yeah.
So anyway, there is a Solitaire here, and we actually took one in. The Gerald Ferris has one, and we picked one up. I sold one at this fairgrounds in 2001 to a gentleman, a neurosurgeon, and we just picked it up on Friday down in Fresno, and it'll be here. We got to go through it and get it cleaned up and in here, but it will be here available for sale also before the end of this. One owner, real nice coach. So there's only about 17 of them out there.
Is that the 17?
I actually have all of the, Jim and Frank, we had a little round table just like this a few years ago, and we taped it, and I never did put it out. We kind of looked at it, and it's just kind of in the archives, and at some point we're going to have it on a continuous loop at the store, and I think that would be fun for everyone to see. But one of the things after that, they brought in all of the Beaver history, they had all these newspaper clippings and brochures and manuals, and there's some really neat stuff in there, and our intention is to kind of have a little Beaver museum at some point. And I have in there, I don't even know if you know it, but there was a book that has it's like a production build sheet for every Solitaire and every Beaver Prevost bus that they built, because they built about 36 Prevosts. Ron was selling them back then.
Yeah, I remember it was 35 or 36 that were built, and they were all gorgeous. Some of the new people here maybe don't know what a Solitaire is, Ty, so maybe you should explain to them what a Solitaire is. It's Jim, you can kind of tell the people what a Solitaire was. It was something a lot different from a regular coach.
It was like a Prevost bus, and it was based on that book with a tall basement. The basement, the floor level of it was at a level, if I walk up to it before it was framed out, it was to my eye level, the floor. So it had a big basement, and it was quite a coach. It really was quite a coach.
It got really close. If they would have had, the turning radius is a little tricky, right, Gerald?
3 football wheels, no problem.
Yeah, I think it's probably, you got to be creative in your planning when you're going to park a Solitaire. And then but it had some good stuff. I mean, it's beautiful. And Gerald's coach will be open this evening if anyone wants to take a look at it. Just kidding. Okay, so here's another question. Were your wives involved in any of the design of interiors or anything like that?
I think Frank's wife was. Frank might want to explain it.
Yeah, Linda has a real good eye for color and what goes where and so forth. A lot better. I don't even know. She looks at something and says, well, it doesn't have any red in it. It needs red because there's red in the picture or something, you know. Anyway, she did a lot of the early decor and getting ready for coaches and things like that. And then pretty soon we ended up getting some help that came in and were professionals, and they worked for us, and she worked with them quite a bit. So she's had a hand in it, and she's very good at decorating.
Good. Somebody knows the answer to this, or they wouldn't have asked it like this. Did you ever build houseboats?
We built 2 houseboats, and that was for us personally.
But they're still out there. I think one of them's up here still.
I think they end up on the in Shasta.
And they were very much like a 93 Marquis interior.
They was based on the Marquis look totally, with the oak cabinetry and the decor inside.
We expanded our plant and ended up with quite a bit of room one winter when things were slow, and tried to figure out how to get through the winter and what to do. And Jim and I talked about it and thought, man, we'd like to have a motorhome. Put it up on Lake Billy Chinook here. And after the winter was over, we bought a set of pontoons from down at Shasta Lake in that area. There were some builders there, and had them delivered and set it on. We built it as a box going down on a trolley through the plant, and got it done and set it up on the pontoons. And we spent so many years. I did, man. Jim spent less time than I did, but I had so much fun with that. And the kids are still water freaks over what we did over the years. We had a wonderful time.
That's really cool. I'm sure these boats were very nice. These guys both take incredible care with their vehicles. We've had the used coaches come in, and Frank had a 98 Diamante that we sold, and it was unbelievable. I can only imagine what kind of shape these houseboats were in, especially with the Marquis interior. So here's another question about, tell us about how Homecoming started and your involvement in the club. We've talked a little bit about that before, how you guys kind of got things going with the club.
Go ahead and explain it. Right.
I think probably Ron would be a better one to talk about that, because we formed the club, and we found that it was a very valuable part of our company, and so we just went and started doing a lot of things with FMCA and RVIA and a lot of different rallies we went to, and it just took off from there.
Did you seeded it with like?
Yes, we had a meeting like this, and we put $10,000 in it and turned it over to you people, and you elected your officers, and you did all the things that you should do, and that's how it really got started.
Were you here for that first meeting? You were at that meeting, Iris?
It was 85 or 86.
You were in Ben for this, the one we were looking at the picture. We're going to show that slideshow. It'll probably be playing at breakfast as well, but there's some really neat pictures in there. We'll make it a little darker in the room, but those brand new 1983 coaches, it's just incredible to see them on the, so Wally and Iris were at that first homecoming. That's awesome. 1983 was the very first homecoming. And we do have all the rally bars here somewhere. They'll be on a table throughout the rally. And you can take a look at them. And it's every rally bar, I believe, that's ever been done. Or we were a few behind, but I think Mike found them. And so anyway, those will be out. You'll see these plaques. And the first one is 1983. And I believe it was at Mount no, it wasn't at Mount Bachelor. It was at an RV park.
It was here.
Was it here? Oh, it was at the old fairgrounds.
Yeah.
The old fairgrounds are basically where Fred Meyer is now. So anyway, those slides will be playing throughout the week. But I thought that was, they saw the value in the club back then, and you know, back in 19 whatever year that was, to put $10,000 toward it. They elected the officers, and you know, the club we're still growing. You see all these first timers here tonight. That's incredible. So the power of the club, it's amazing. This is the first time ever there's been beavers in the bunny barn. So Let's hope it's not the last. When fair rolls around the 1st of August, this will be full of rabbits and actually all kinds of poultry too, but we call it the bunny barn. So we'll just keep, there could be a theme there, the beavers in the bunny barn. Okay, let's see what else we have for questions here. The brown and tan Class A, what was that, Ron? What years were the Class A's up to when they were brown?
I think they started in, what was it, 70? No, excuse me, it was 81 or 82.
81 or 82, yeah.
81 or 82, they came out with the first one. And then remember in 85, 84 or 85, they came out with a Chateau Marquis, which was the first try at building a real luxury motorhome, and it went over quite well. And then in 86, they came out with a special model called the Tuxedo Edition. You remember that?
Yeah.
It was a beautiful coach inside. I mean, today's cabinetry in any coach that's built today, I don't care how much money you pay for it, doesn't rival what was built back in those days. The cabinetry was absolutely phenomenal.
Sorry, Bob, if Bob Tiffin showed up. Bob, we love your cabinets and we love your coach. We love you. Okay, you were talking about that Chateau Marquis. There's a story about, it may have been that coach, driving to Louisville. Those of you that don't know, RV manufacturers, up until this last year, they ended it, take their products to Louisville to show off to all the dealers. And wasn't manufacturing happening between Bend and Louisville, building a coach along the way?
I think that's the year that, you're talking about the year that we introduced the solid oak cabinetry. And we was building 30-foot Class A's with the standard stick-built cabinets. And we came out with, of course, we got this solid oak one, and we didn't know how, I just mentioned earlier that we spent $10,000 for the cabinetry in it. But with the $10,000 added on top of what we was selling 30-footers for at that time, just didn't add up. So we were saying, well, maybe we could sell that thing for $35,000. And we had the sales guy with us in the airplane, Frank and I, and the sales guy, and we had the coach delivered to Louisville. And we're having a few drinks, and we're bragging to each other how nice this thing is. It is so beautiful. And Frank and I said, I bet we could probably sell that for $45,000 if we wanted to, you know. And so, time we got to Louisville, the coach was $65,000.
And it's sold.
And it's sold. And we had a line. We had to hire people to stand at the door to keep the traffic down. You know.
What year do you suppose that was?
That was before me. That was
80.
It had to be 82, 83.
Yeah. And Jim also was talking about there was at least 2 mechanics or guys in the coach finishing it as they're driving to Louisville. The coach was under construction all the way there.
But it was a winner when we got it to Louisville, and at the end of the day, we were so proud. We came back, and like I mentioned earlier, that we bought the cabinet shop so we could continue on building the same product.
That's neat. So, and Ron, what year did you start?
the facility that you're in now was built in 88, and I started in the fall of 88 at that facility. We were selling at the time 2 coaches, a Contessa, which had just come out, and a Marquis. That was the 2 Beavers that were produced at that time.
Okay. I got a question about what was the very first Beaver built, and did you also make truck campers? So you guys actually started building like canopy shells or something in Corvallis?
We started off building canopies for backup pickup trucks.
And that was in '66?
As in 1966, and then we got so busy so quick, and the demand for slide-in campers were there, so we started building the slide-in camper.
Isn't it true that you became a dealer before you became a manufacturer for a truck camper? Was there a deal?
No, we was a dealer in Pompano Beach, Florida.
Okay.
Selling open road campers.
And you didn't mean to be a dealer, you just wanted to buy a camper, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, how we got involved in the camper thing, that Frank and I, we kind of wanted to go west because we lived in Pompano Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and we had in the back of our minds that we wanted to go west. So we decided, okay, let's buy a pickup truck and a camper apiece and go west. So that's actually, we went to Boulder City, Colorado first, and we was there for about 2 weeks and said, man, there's no water around here. So we ended up, Frank's in-laws lived in Corvallis, so we ended up going to Corvallis, and that's how we ended up there. And of course that we didn't start building campers right away. It was there for about a month and not knowing what to do, and so one day we just decided, hey, those open roads, we had to rebuild them when we got them. We knew how they go together, so we just decided, hey, let's build a camper. And so actually we did start a camper and the canopies, but the canopies sold first, and it was fun.
That's
and
neat.
Frank's wife, she was a good sport. She would come there and shoot the staples just like the rest of us, and help us, and it was fun.
We had a 1983 Beaver camper on the lot. We were going to redo it for the museum. That must have been about the end of the campers, huh?
79, 83, 88, when the Class A's came out,
Yeah. We were going to redo it, and it was just too far gone. We couldn't salvage it. But as we can get our hands on these old coaches, what I really want is, I believe it's a 1971. You guys did a GMC truck mount.
A chassis mount, yeah.
Did that sound right about 71?
Yeah.
My best friend growing up, the first time I ever went camping was in a 1971 Beaver. And then they traded it in on one with the Dodge 440. But it was that GMC truck.
GMC truck, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to, if you guys are out in your travels and you see any of those with the old chassis mount with the GMC or Chevy, let me know, because I'm looking for one. I look on Craigslist all the time, and I'd love to have one, and we'd really like to get some of these old pieces and restore them. Okay, do you have a favorite coach that you manufactured? So of all the coaches you manufactured, what's your favorite one?
I think the Contessa.
The early one?
Here, yeah.
So here's the deal with the Contessa. So it was at what year? 88. Okay, so then in 93 they quit building that body style, and they came out with the 94 Acclaim. Does anyone in here have a 94 Contessa? And the Acclaim kind of was a flop, so they rebranded it Contessa. So it was it had the same front cap as the Patriot, and I think rear cap. The front cap may have been a little different, but close. And then the Patriot was actually under the Contessa when it came out in 1993. So then when they reintroduced the Contessa, the Patriot was in the line, they reintroduced the Contessa in 1998. It came in under the Patriot. And do you remember the folks at the Rallies when they did that? It's like the people that had the old, you guys remember it, the old Contessa folks, they brought in this Patriot that was above their Contessa, and it wasn't good. I tell you something, the club back then, it was a little different deal. I remember the first rallies I started going to in the mid-90s. It was mostly marquees, and if you had a Contessa and if you bought one of these new Patriots, you weren't really in the same circles. It wasn't as open as it is now. And I remember in 1998, of course this was after you guys were still bumming around, but you weren't too involved in the factory, but in 1998 I think we're in Ohio, when they introduced the new Patriot with the Girard awnings and the hydronic heat and the Bose Theater surround sound, we sold a few old marquee owners Patriots, and man, I thought they were going to get excommunicated from the club. It was ugly. But it's fun to watch that evolution. Now it doesn't matter, a beaver's a beaver. So Ron, if it weren't for Ron, I wouldn't have made it to Bend. We worked for Destinations RV, and Ron worked in the Bend store, and I worked in the Fife, Washington store. And him and I went to Maine. In fact, this is interesting that Bob's here too. We went to the Maine FMCA show. I think that was in August of 2000. And while we're there, we're told by the mucky mucks at Beaver that our dealer's going to be out of business and we don't have a job. We may have to change shirts. They want us to keep selling, but it may be wearing a different shirt while we're there. And Ron asked me if I'd ever be interested. We didn't know each other before this, and the guys in Bend and myself were kind of the top Beaver salespeople in the country, and so we got to hang out. And Jody and Ann were there, and we hung out for a couple weeks. And Ron asked if I'd ever want to move to Bend, and I said, well, of course. Beaver's kind of my life, and that's where they're made, and I'd love to be there. So at the point when the dealership did go out of business, Ron called me and asked if I would be interested in coming down and working there. They were going to have a manager and 5 salespeople that were going to own the dealership. And I didn't really want to come down and be the only guy that wasn't a partner, and they didn't have a spot, so I didn't think it was going to work at first. And then the manager decided not to do it, and Ron called and said, hey, you can be a partner in this. So I said, well, I'm in. And so these guys brought me down. None of them knew me.
He didn't have any money, but he said he was in.
I can sell, though. You don't have to have money if you can sell. So believe it or not, I think I got that money from about 13 different sources. I had to mortgage cars and take out loans on credit cards and all that. So that was 2001. Yeah, right before the FMCA show that was here. And it was Ron and I and Richie, PJ, Scott Dyson, and Chris Jackson. So Scott Dyson, by the way, still works for us. He's the guy's got 9 lives. He's been on his deathbed several times in the last 2 years. He's in our parts department. He does the inventory control. He's there every day. He works whatever hours he wants. And Jim and Frank know Scott really well, and his father. Scott's dad worked for you forever, right?
He started in Corvallis.
He did? Oh, I didn't know that.
When we were in Corvallis, we were looking for places that would welcome us to come, because we had production people, and we brought a lot of jobs with us. In Corvallis, all they were interested in was Oregon State University, and there's an old blue law that's still on the books, I understand, in Corvallis, is you can't carry a lunch bucket down the main street. That was a law they had, and I think it's still effective. I mean, they don't police it, but it's still on the books. Anyway, we checked McMinnville in that area, and ended up someone here at the Bend Industrial Development Corporation heard that we were looking for a spot. So they came over and asked us to come and have lunch with them, and they'd show us the property they had where we could build a plant and so forth. And one of the first people, after they found out that where we were and that we were coming over, was Al Dyson. Came down to visit us while we were in Corvallis, and that's where we met him. And that was probably in '69, and he worked for us from '69 until we were out of the company, and been a good friend to us, the whole family, Scott included. Just greatest people in the world.
And I believe he brought Scott in like around '76 or something like that.
Yes,
So.
Scott was, he actually came in as a product manager, come in as a parts manager.
Yeah, he was. He was a parts guy. He worked at NAPA.
He was working in the Bay Area somewhere in Central California. Livermore, right. And anyway, we met him and were very impressed with him, and we brought him in, and he stayed with us, and he's still with Beaver Coaches, so it's going to be forever.
40-some years he's been driving to that same address, 42, 43 years. Unbelievable. But those of you that are in town, be sure and He's hard to find, but if you ask for him, they'll show you where he is. Say hi to him. This is a good one here, is how did you choose the particular shape for the Beaver? I'm assuming for the logo, for the Beaver logo. How'd you come up with that?
Are you talking about the little beaver logo or the?
I think the new one, right? The one that we're using now, or it's.
Why don't you go on?
I believe that we started out with the little animal that was kind of we
Up with the beaver.
we took that over from Beaver OSU and made some changes to it and everything so it didn't compete with theirs. But then later on, I think when Matt, he came to work in our sales department, and he wanted to come up with a more modern design for the trademark design itself. And that's where I understand that new Beaver design showed up,
I think that's correct, yeah. And
3?
93.
I can't remember.
91 or 90, up to 93 in that area.
Oh, who was the engineer? There was someone from Corvette that helped design something?
I believe his name was Shinoda.
Yeah, Larry Shinoda
Shinoda,
was
yeah.
his name, and he did a lot of the early Corvette designs.
I think I have a book at home. He has a signature on it. Yeah.
What I'd really like to do right now, I'd love to have Bob Tiffin come up to the stage here. I don't think these guys have ever met. First of all, Bob, I got to tell you, Ron and I, in 2000 in Maine, there's a lot of history right here. I mean, is anybody else's hair on their arm standing up? Have a seat, Bob. So, Ron and I, when we were in Maine at the FMCA show, I had met Bob. Jody and I had the privilege of going on a cruise with Bob and Judy Tiffin. We went to Alaska. I worked at a different dealer and qualified and got to go on this cruise. And so I had met him and we got to spend some time together on the cruise. Well, a couple years later, Ron and I are at the FMCA show in Maine, and we're in this basement. I don't know if it was like some kind of a little restaurant in Maine. And I said, that's Bob and Judy Tiffin sitting over there. And Ron hadn't met him, so Ron and I walked over, and I said, Bob, I'm Ty Kelly. Beaver. At the time, it was Tweetin' RV. And he remembered us, and I introduced him to Ron. And so we went about our business, and Ron and I went to leave, and Bob had paid for our dinner, and Ron and I have not actually had a chance to thank Bob for that meal. So Bob, thank you very much. We appreciate it. It's been 18 years, but thank you very much. So Bob's got this Zephyr coach here. This is the latest, greatest Tiffin product, and we would love to hear a little about what's going on at Tiffin.
Well, the same thing's going on at Tiffin that's going since 1972. We started our business in September of 1972. We incorporated about the 15th day of September, and we hadn't built any motorhomes. Never had built any. But we had 3 motorhome companies that had been in our area before we started, and they all went broke. That's a common thing in the motorhome business, going broke. When I started, there was over 100 manufacturers building motorhomes. And Daddy said, I believe we can build motorhomes. I said, Daddy, have you ever looked at the list of all the people that building motorhomes? He said, no, but he said we can build them. So we started, we had a cotton warehouse. Y'all don't raise cotton out here, but we raise a lot of cotton in Alabama. And we had a 20,000 square foot cotton warehouse, and we started building motorhomes in that cotton warehouse from the employees of Sunliner, Safari, and Open Road. Can you believe it? Wow. We had all those trade names there in Red Bay. And they got handed down to somebody else, and they went out of business. And some of them were out here. I think Safari. Did y'all have Safari one time?
Yeah.
I thought you did. I didn't remember. Y'all started talking about dates, and I remember. And of course, you mentioned 1982. I'll tell you what, we've had 3 major meltdowns in this industry. We had one in 1973 and 74 and part of 75. We had another meltdown in 79, 80, and 81 and 82. And we had another major meltdown just recently in 8, 9, and part of 10. And you know, each time we had one of these meltdowns, we had less manufacturers. The first one we wound up with, out of 100, we had 40 left. In 79, 80, and 81, and 82, we had 10 left. And this last go around, there's 4 of us. There's 4 manufacturers building these big motorhomes now, is all they are. And there's just 2 private companies left, us and Newmar's, the only 2 left. And I have great respect for these 2 gentlemen here. These 3 gentlemen built the Beaver Motorhomes. They did a fantastic job. In fact, you know, everybody copies everything. There is no secrets in this business, let me tell you. When we go to Louisville, we run down to the Beaver display and we just go through it like everything. We tear all the cabinets apart. Of course, they didn't know it. We wanted to see how they built those beautiful cabinets. You know, we were buying a cabinet door from a company called Bellwood Door Company down in Akron, Mississippi. And we could not build our motorhome cabinets like they needed to be because we didn't have the technology to build a cabinet door. You know, it's a lot of technology that goes in the cabinet door, building the cabinet door. And so we just had to do the best we could. So, you know, the motorhomes were not sized right inside. You know, they didn't have the right coverage safes. They didn't have anything right. But we managed to struggle through all those years by servicing our dealers. And servicing our customers. That's what we've been noted for all the years, is taking care of our customers. If they have a problem, we take care of them. And I want to encourage y'all, when you do finally ever wear these beavers out, to buy an Allegro bus. I know they don't wear out because I see them. I saw some of them over here in the campground this afternoon when I was looking through the fence. But you know, if that happens, you know, you're always welcome in the Tiffin family. And
With that, I think I'll end this. I want to thank everyone in the panel here for showing up, and so happy that you guys got to see this. If you have questions for Bob, he's going to be.
Say hello to the boss.
yeah.
Good to see you again.
Take care.
Take care.
And, try to keep